Hello and welcome back for the second time today. I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And once again, I am your host, Jackson Keller.
And if you are just joining us for our second episode, which is Into the Spider-Verse, welcome. If you missed our fact that we released 2 episodes today, about like an hour or 2 ago, I'm not entirely sure. This clearly is not the day of release. We put out fucking the Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2 episode that we promised last week, but we lost to the ether. We're doing a double recording right now. So like if you haven't listened to that, we're probably gonna like get some of that flowing into this. Like we stopped recording that like 10 minutes ago, so like we're still very much in that headspace. So just get ready for that.
We're live. We're full of energy. We're here to talk about Spider-Man 3 Into the Spider-Verse. I still have like a husky low voice because I'm trapped in my mom's back room trying not to wake everybody up.
So I think you're caught up to speed with what you might have missed last time.
If you haven't watched those episodes, go watch that one and also the Spider-Man 1 and 2 episode. They were all bangers. So.
Yeah, and also very surprising from the last one if you are familiar with how we generally feel about movies. Like that last episode was wildly positive, given that, you know, we were expecting to be lukewarm on Spider-Man 3 and pretty down on Amazing Spider-Man 2, but ultimately ended up at relatively down on Spider-Man 2 and pretty fucking hot for Spider-Man 3, so...
We got some, like, sizzling takes in that one. I know Spider-Man 3 is still contentious because, oh God, who do I follow? Jamel Bowie. He's a writer for Slate. Sometimes he tweets about movies, and he said that like whenever he writes something about like racism, he doesn't get nearly as much hate mail as when he says something nice about Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, no, Spider-Man fucking 3 is wonderful, and like we're probably gonna be on that side where like we're really big fans of it. So I don't know. Sue us. Don't sue us. I don't know what you can sue.
Sean converted me. I was already pretty like cool on it, but Sean converted me to being an even bigger Spider-Man 3 apologist. So, go listen to the episode.
It's fucking great. Into the Spider-Verse, though, is also fucking great. It was a wonderful, wonderful movie. I'm going to, we're already going to kind of talk about comparisons to the Raimi Spider-Man because those are arguably probably our favorite Spider-Man movies. And I'm going to say Into the Spider-Verse is probably the best Spider-Man movie if you look at them as individuals. I think I like the Raimi Spider-Man movies as a trilogy and as an arc better. But like if you're like, what's better, Spider-Man 3 or Into the Spider-Verse? The answer is Into the Spider-Verse. But if you're like, who did better with the whole thing? The answer is Raimi's Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about the Raimi movies, is that any one, like, individual movie doesn't feel as stand out to me as, like, what an achievement it is as a whole and how thoroughly it nails, like, the themes and emotions of Spider-Man. Whereas this is a lot more of, like... If Spider-Man 3 is... Spider-Man 3... If the Raimi trilogy is, like... bathing in Spider-Man, like immersing yourself in a bath for the long haul of Spider-Man. This is like getting blasted with a hose of pure concentrated Spider-Man. Very quick,
you'll get the same result, but one's way more enjoyable.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not sure how I feel, because this movie, the best word I have for the way that I felt about this movie is that it was a delight. And for me, when I call a movie delight, that is both compliment and also sort of not, because obviously it's complimented that delight is fun. Being delighted is great. We love delightful things. That's why they're delightful. But if that is the
delightful children from down the lane.
The delightful children from down the lane. Super Saiyan 4, number 4. Anyway,
that was nothing. That was less than nothing.
I think we've reached a new low on the show.
Oh my god.
That was the most meaningless DBZ reference I've ever made. But I did there. you do know why I made it, right?
Because there was none in the previous episode?
No, because there is an episode where there is an episode of Kids Next Door where the delightful children from down the lane, I can't remember what the actual episode is about because it's the only thing that like stands out to me, because I think it was you that sent me this clip actually, like when I was first getting into Dragon Ball, of like number 4 battling the delightful children, like
yes!
and he powers up and only his hair gets bigger and then he gets shit stomped, and it's a funny meme. So that's why I said that, but it made no sense in context.
It's like the type of thing that, like, you're the only person to remember, and saying so will jog 3 other people's memories, and the rest of us will just be like, what in God's name are you fucking talking about? I thought you were just trying to make up, because, like, last episode was, like, real low on memes. Like, last episode was just us, like, hey, let's talk about a movie and, like, have an actual conversation and, like, you know, digest these things.
I think it's the first episode in a while, you know, if you all have your bingo sheets, I think it's the first episode in a while where you will not fill in the boxes for DBZ reference, JoJo reference, or Metal Gear Solid reference.
No, I did refer to you as Solid Snake in the beginning.
Oh, right. That's right. I forgot. Well, I mean, there goes that. I like how already we've devolved into like Monday Night quarterbacking the episode we just recorded 3 minutes ago. So Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I was talking about it being delightful, and for me, of course, it's a positive adjective. But when that's the primary word that I can think of when it comes to a movie, it's usually because there wasn't as much. It was an experience that I very much enjoyed, but there wasn't as much for me to like latch onto, to like simmer into my brain. And in this case, basically how I've been telling what I've been telling everyone is that the animation is amazing. It looks incredible. The stylization is wonderful. It's like, honestly, you could probably like turn off all the sound and just watch this as a silent film and still get a supremely enjoyable experience out of it. And the story, this is a case where the story, I feel like, you know, get your bingo sheets out, kids. It feels like that the story sets up the tone for it to be one way. Like the beginning of the movie, aside from the very start, where they're reenacting some of the scenes from the Raimi ones, and Peter's giving backstory. Yeah, that was some real good shit. Like that instantly like got me hyped, and it's real rewarding after like spending so much time rewatching all the Raimi movies.
We've seen so many Spider-Man.
We've watched so much fucking Spider. We should have just done Amazing 1 and Homecoming. Why the fuck not? Like
I feel like we missed out.
We could be like like Spider-Man scholars, basically. I mean, who's to say that we won't in the future? But anyway, so that's all great. But after that sort of scene, and where we get kind of our establishing character moments with our actual protagonist, Miles, it feels a lot more Raimi, not in like the tone or the style, but in the, we're gonna show you that like he goes to like this private school, and like he's kind of torn because he doesn't want to go, but his dad really wants him to go, and he's really cool at home, but
it's Raimi in that there's character development.
I mean, it's Raimi in that there's character development. Oh God. What an absolute travesty that the current movie industry is such that when there is real character development and like setup and characterization, I end up comparing it to a specific director rather than just like character development. It feels like a stylistic trademark of individual directors. Yeah, so that's all great. And then I like the scene where Miles becomes Spider-Man, like basically that whole like first half in the movie to where he meets Peter. That all works really well, but it's after that when we start getting into more of like the timey-wimey shenanigans that the movie, it doesn't drag. I never stopped enjoying it, but it felt it felt more by the numbers to me in terms of the story, which it did what it had to do, which is great, and it delivered a supremely enjoyable movie with a lot of really exhilarating scenes and fun characters. I just don't know. I think the best way that I can think about this is that, like, the Raimi movies are going to be, like, sitting with me for, like, a long time now that I've gone back to them, and, like, thinking about the themes, the characters, and sort of, like, the character drama and moral dilemmas posited therein. Whereas Into the Spider-Verse, there are a lot of really interesting scenes that, you know, we're going to talk about, but I feel like a lot of that's been overwhelmed by just sort of the, like, flashiness. And I hate using the word flashiness because that makes it sound like it's super shallow, because it really isn't. But, like,
I was gonna say, I feel like the big thing here though too is just like it might not be as heavy on theme, but like it's a masterpiece in a whole different variety. And like I'm gonna speak for you for a second, just because I feel like I know you well enough to do so. I feel like the big issue for you is that it doesn't have the staying power, because it's not as like thematically punchy. Like the theme, in case it's not clear from even just like the fucking trailers and stuff, is that anyone can be Spider-Man. That's not a spoiler. Like, that's the whole idea of this movie. And like, that's it laid out. There's not a whole lot of huge character development. There's not a whole lot of like moral conundrums or anything like that. The movie itself is just an enjoyable spectacle. And like, I'll be sitting on like the spectacle and whatnot of it. Like, I thought it was visually stunning. Like, that's the type of stuff that I'm going to be lingering on. But that's not so much what you would linger on, despite the fact of being very good.
No, you're right. Yeah, the and like visual spectacle, like, I'm there with you. Like, this is an amazing looking movie. Like, in terms of pure visuals, this is like one of the best animated movies I've ever seen, probably. And so, like, absolutely, if for visuals alone, definitely go check it out. If you are looking, like, if you are one of those like diehard Raimi fans and they're looking for that in the story, maybe temper your expectations a little bit. Go in expecting it to be visually stunning and fun, and that's what you'll get, and it will be fun.
I mean, I wouldn't even go as far as to say, like, I feel like when you said temper your expectations a little bit, like, emphasis on a little bit.
Yes.
Like, it's not vapid by any stretch of the imagination.
Yes.
Like, it's still very good. Its themes are very concise. There's character development. There's character change. There's, like, heartfelt moments. It's incredibly well done. Yes. It's just not to the level of, like, intimate moments of Spider-Man questioning everything and, you know, wondering about the soul, essentially.
The visuals are definitely outpacing the storytelling here, but the storytelling is still good by any reasonable metric.
I mean, and when the visuals are outpacing the storytelling, I mean, you've fucking seen the trailers for this movie. That's not saying anything. Like, the storytelling could be next level and the visuals would still be outpacing it, because the visuals are just so off the fucking wall.
Yeah, oh my god, like, it's so crazy just how much having a unique style helps with making action scenes like this sort of palatable, because I think back to, like, a lot of the, like, Marvel movies that, you know, are kind of drab and brown and gray for a lot of them. Like, they've been changing that more recently, but, like, I'm thinking, like, Ultron and a lot of the Phase 2 movies were, you know, pretty, even just with regards to color palette, pretty, like, dull. And so then when a lot of stuff starts blowing up, it just feels like a bunch of noise. But, like, shit goes, you know, cuckoo crazy bananas in, like, the last, like, 15 minutes of this movie. And, like, in a less stylistically masterful movie, it could have felt obnoxious and overbearing, but it's exactly as awesome as it needs to be.
Yeah. Somebody
no.
pointed this out, that this is like the first movie I've wanted to see in 3D. Like, I want to go back and watch this in 3D.
Oh my god, you're totally right. I hadn't even thought about that, but yes, this would be like the first movie since Resident Evil Afterlife where I feel like the experience was improved by 3D.
I mean, like, honest to God, I am tempted to, at some point in the next week or two, go back and watch this in 3D, just because, like, it does honestly feel like it would be enhanced by that, and, like, that's saying just crazy things, because in 3D tickets are, like, $17 fucking dollars. And, like, I'm not opposed to spending that money to see this. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I would totally go again, especially if it was in 3D. but I'm brushing up. I don't know if you have more to say, but I'm brushing up on what I have to say without going into spoilers.
I don't necessarily know that I do. I've got a little bit of cute little things. Like if you have not looked up the cast, don't do it until you leave the theater. But definitely check out who's in the cast, because there's a lot of people in there that you are not prepared for them to be in. And I just want to mention this just because like this is my favorite little fact that I found about the movie, and I think it's a really clever little in-joke, and it comes and goes within the first third of the movie. But if you pay attention, and I don't know why I caught this, but like I couldn't stop seeing it. For like the first third, not even maybe, like half an hour, the number 42 shows up all over the fucking place. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to show up. What is this? What is this a reference to? Like, what's going on with it? And as it turns out, like I went and did some research on it. The original run of this had the reference to 42, and it was a thing that they just kind of kept pumping throughout, and like, hey, we're gonna come back to like why this number is important and everything. And then it eventually just kind of dropped, and the movie about a third of the way through just drops it. Like you never see it again. And I think that is the funniest fucking visual joke I have ever heard.
Oh my god, that's incredible.
Like, it is some next level goddamn meta shit, and it is so wonderful.
Wow. Ooh. I did not notice the 42 at all, but that's beautiful. See, I think people just need to be more willing to do that, to just drop things and leave people hanging, because it creates for amusing scenarios sometimes.
Yeah, no, as if I'm like, all right, I have to look at like what the fuck is going on with 42. Like, it has to be some sort of reference. Is it like the universe number? Like, I'm like, I know enough about Spider-Man that I feel like I should be understanding what is going on with this. And then I'm just like, oh, this is like next level meta. What the fuck, man? Somebody knows their shit here.
They kept it in to fuck with you.
Yeah.
You specifically, Sean.
Yeah. No, it's like the type of, like, that's the other thing too, is like, if you aren't like really paying attention, like it draws your eyes to the numbers, but in a way that like, if you're not as acquainted with movies, cause like I talked to some people, like they nobody else saw it. But like, I watch how cameras are set up and stuff like that. And like everything that's in the scene is there for a reason. Like it originally was just like, it's on the spider that bites Miles. God, we've been talking about Spider-Man way too fucking much. It's on the spider that bites Miles. The number 42 is there. It shows up in a couple other places. But the big thing where I'm like, all right, this has to be a thing, is at one point, Miles falls off a building, hits an awning, and knocks loose some numbers. And the numbers were 432 in that order. And I'm like, ooh, 432. I'm going to pay attention to that just because like that could be a cool little reference. But then when he hits the ground, he hits and the 4 is on his left and the 2 is on his right. And if visually looking at it, it's 42 again. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? That is clearly something, some sort of reference that I am just missing. So I was thrilled that I caught it. It was cute. Also, you can see Brian Michael Bendis' phone number when he scrolls through his phone. That's just something else that was cute. And Steve Ditko's in his dad's. That's all.
I did notice that, actually. I did notice Steve Ditko in there. Although 42, yeah, now that you mention it, like I remember seeing it on the spider, but I wrote it off as just being like some Spider-Man like technobabble, like this is sample 42, and that's got some meaning in the comics that
it was a goober.
It was a goober. It was a goober. Oh man.
So, spoilers.
I was gonna say let's talk some spoilers, because I've put my finger on what the movie led me to believe. And what the movie led me to believe was that it was going to be, at first, that it was going to be The Hate U Give, but with Spider-Man, and that it's a very similar scenario where like you have the character going between two different schools. They have a cop dad figure, and like navigating this sort of thing. And I thought that that would be the main sort of focus, and it is for a while, and that's great. And then the multiverse happens, which is also great in its own way. But then I feel like, I don't know much about Miles Morales as a character. I only know that like of the sort of like next generation alternate universe Spider-Man's like he's the most prominent, the most popular. So I don't really know much about him as a character, but it feels like a lot of his personal problems. Weirdly enough, I think some of the magic is killed for me when we get the reveal that the girl in this class is Gwen, which, I kind of assumed, no, the movie is about, but also, like, that's the way that the movie had been going about it was that this is a lot of the similar sort of scenarios that, like, Peter went through, but from a different perspective, which is, of course, the point of the movie, but the fact that it then becomes really intertwined with the multiverse dimensions, I feel like that's where we start to lose some of that personal connection.
Oh, see, that just feels so comic book to me, though. Like, I feel like that's just the thing that, like, being a comic geek growing up, I'm like, yeah, all right, fuck it.
No, that's completely fair, and like it's not a problem. I'm not trying to say it's a problem, but I think that was
per se.
I wouldn't even say I don't think it's a problem per se. I don't think it's a problem, period. But it was the moment in the movie where I had sort of realized that maybe it was going to be. I guess here's another example. We talked about, Gwen a lot in the last episode because obviously Amazing Spider-Man 2, but she's in this as Spider-Gwen, and was it weird to you that like flabby, depressed alternate universe Peter didn't really have anything to say about running into Gwen, but as a Spider Girl? Because I was sort of expecting that and was kind of surprised that they didn't.
I feel like there's a couple of reasons for that. I feel like there's enough of a recognition. We're gonna link to MovieBob's video in this one too. Because I feel like he mentions it too, or I don't know that he does. We're gonna link to it anyway because we're talking about Gwen Stacy, so fuck it. But I saw somewhere that somebody talked about how, like, it looked like there was a brief flash of recognition or enough of, like, an interaction between Peter Parker and Gwen, that it would logically make sense that he kind of has some recognition. But once again, like, he said, like, this is not the weirdest fucking thing that's ever happened to me. Like, in the universe of the comics, people die, come back, go away. I want to say that it's somewhere in here too, there's a reference to the Spider Clone saga, which is just next level batshit insane.
I was kind of surprised that maybe we did, but like I was kind of surprised that I don't recall hearing the name Ben Reilly come up. I was for sure that was the thing that was gonna happen. I didn't want them to like have. I did notice the like little thing of recognition, and I don't. Again, it's not a problem that like there wasn't a big conversation because I can easily see how that would have been corny and bad. But it feels weirdly enough like I think part of my problem with the storytelling in the movie is that a lot of the movie still feels like it's more about flabby Peter than the other characters who are also Spider-Man. And that's the central theme, is that they're all Spider-Man and they're all valid Spider-Men, Spider-Women, Spider-Persons, Spider-Pigs, in their own way. And yet,
I mean, it definitely has a huge focus on flabby Peter. But like, I feel like just within the limits of the movie, there's only so much you can really do as far as characterization of some of the background characters. It's admittedly kind of a cop-out response to what you're saying, because like you have some valid criticism with what you're presenting. It's just like we have an emphasis on Miles, then Peter B. Parker, or aka Flabby Peter, and then Gwen Stacy, and then the others. And I feel like those are kind of like the big three Spider-Man, and so like the rest of them are just kind of in the background, but like you kind of cover your bases with that. You have minority Spider-Man, old white dude Spider-Man, and girl Spider-Man. Like I realize that is like super fucking crass. Like I get it. Like I am well aware of what I just said.
But not inaccurate.
Yeah. And because, like, I mean, granted, you have Asian girl Spider-Man in SP // DR.
I just call her Kawaii Spider-Man.
But, like, I mean, even she just kind of shows up. Like, it is, for more than anything, representation stake. But, like, you know, fucking Spider-Noir never sees his face, but he's voiced by Nicolas Cage, so, like, it's a white dude. Fucking Spider-Ham is it's literally a pig. Like, representation to be damned with that one. And I'm missing one, right?
I think he got all the major ones. There was future Spider-Man in, like, the post-credit scene, but he wasn't really a part of the movie.
Yeah. And then there was Spider-Man 67, which was fucking wonderful. I'm not gonna lie, I adored the references to the 1960s Spider-Man memes.
Oh, no, those were great. Yeah.
There was an early one on where they had Peter sitting behind a desk looking like the fucking scene from that. And then they just doubled down on it in the credits, and then they had the pointing scene at the end. Oh, I'm fucking in love with that shit.
No, I mean, that's, like, they clearly, in a way, this feels like sort of the antithesis of, like, the ethos of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, which is, you know, one of the things that I appreciate is because the Amazing Spider-Man movies were all about, like, let's take Spider-Man and, like, make him more like a conventional blockbuster, more like a YA movie, more like these things that, like, people can kind of get invested in.
Twilight! Oh, man, I don't know why I just said that. Maybe if you listened to the last episode we released, you'd understand more.
But the thing about this movie that I genuinely do really appreciate about it is that it just revels in its love for the long, weird history of the character.
Everything Spider-Man.
Yeah, and I'm a big sucker for that shit. So
you can see the Spider Jeep. The Spider Jeep, which appeared in like three episodes of the show, and like a comic issue or two. It's great. It just is in the background at one point. It's so good.
See, I should just assume that all of these things are real things, and that none of them were made up. But like, I never expect it.
You don't know what the Spider Jeep is?
I don't know what the Spider Jeep is.
Oh my god, dude! It was a fucking Jeep that could ride on walls. It was like a dune buggy, but like it stuck to walls.
So what you're saying is that it was the stand Wheel of Fortune. I had to do it.
You didn't, though. That's the thing. You could have just not.
Oh god. So we got memes. We got plenty of good memes, which is what I appreciate. And so I guess going back to my point is that like I feel like I wanted more out of, like, in general. I think I wanted more out of Gwen in particular. Especially because like the central.
Well, you'll get that. She's been confirmed for her own movie.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm down for that. Yeah, no, I'll go see that. Fuck. Anyway, like I know the central relationship was kind of the big brother mentor thing between Miles and Peter, which, from what I understand, Flavie Peter, which from what I understand reflects the like Ultimate Spider-Man comics that Miles first appeared in. So I don't mind that like Penny Parker and Nicolas Cage and Spider-Pig were all like memes and didn't get development. Like they were there to be funny memes and they were. So that's fine by me. I think the crux of what was surprising to me, what was surprising about so much of the focus being on Flavie Peter still is that like, so we get when Miles first. I gotta quiet down a little bit. Shit. So we get when Miles first.
I'm definitely keeping that in, by the way.
Yeah. Oh no. God, I'm waking up the whole house. So when we get when Miles first goes to the like underground time portal machine that Kingpin is making, and the prime blonde Peter Parker is having his little fight with him, and we get a really effective, like really serious scene where like we see Kingpin win, and like it's a big moment where he unmasks him and then just clubs him to death. Like I think you can even hear like his spine crack. Like it's surprisingly brutal for the style. It's it's really understated. And so it's this really big moment, and for me, like that was because I had sort of expected just from the trailers, and I don't know if the Flabby Peter was ever identified as such as in the trailers, but like so what I had sort of expected was that, you know, you got that shot of Peter Parker's grave, in that like I thought that when Kingpin killed Peter Parker, that would be the last we saw of Peter Parker in the story as a living entity, I guess. And again, the route that they went with, perfectly well written, no real like problems. But I think, you know, if I'm looking to chase those themes, you know, waft in the fine goo of the Spider-Man themes, something about the idea of like just Miles and Gwen, and, you know, maybe a couple other characters like sort of forging their own path is just the more like personally appealing thing to me. But again, I know that's a completely different movie, so that's kind of neither here nor there. But that was
also we've been watching Peter Parker do this for like 12 hours at this point. We have inundated ourselves with Spider-Man. Like, I hate to say, like, it could just be that we are tired of Peter.
Well, but see, we have been watching a bunch of Peter recently just from doing this podcast, but I feel like culturally that's how a lot of people feel too, is that, I mean, that was definitely how people felt during like the Amazing days, but like Homecoming is sort of redeemed or remedied this a little bit, and like his appearance in Civil War, like people liked those movies, they liked Tom Holland, so they're kind of fine with watching Peter Parker again, especially because there are a lot of things that differentiate him from both the Raimi version and the Andrew Garfield version.
But aren't there a lot of things that differentiate this Peter from those versions as well?
There definitely do, which is why I'm saying that it's not at all a problem, and a lot of their interactions were fun and funny, and it was a good movie done well. But part of me, like, you know, the little boy in me who wants death to be permanent and weighty at all times, like, still just
the
really...
little boy in you that wants this.
Sean, I didn't expect my past as a child murderer to come out on this podcast, but you know, you don't think that the people you met were my real parents, do you?
Oh man, this is why we don't record 2 episodes in a row. Things go weird.
But like, so the little edgelord in me, let's say, like was really impacted by like Miles having to like sort of carry the mantle, and watching, you know, Golden Boy Peter Parker like actualized, you know, coming off the end of Spider-Man 3, where he kind of is like actualized and gets over a lot of his shit, and the fact that that's the one that this Peter like even specifically references by doing like gloriously recreating the dancing scene in this wonderful animation in the full spider suit. So like having him just get clubbed to death feels like a big thing. So and Flabby Peter is his own character because it makes sense that we have a version of Peter where things didn't work out so well for him, because again, there's a lot of different Spider-Mans, and that's a different...
There's the one where Peter gives Mary Jane cancer with his sperm.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. Like, they specifically mention that like he didn't want to have kids, and I'm wondering if even that was a little bit of a nod to like Spider-Man's cancerous semen.
That's where I was thinking too. Actually, I'm like, oh my god, are they making a reference to that?
And considering all the other deep cuts in the movie, I'm sure that they were. Like, pretty good metric is if I know about it, it's probably intentional.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. For me, just that scene was a weirdly serious, impactful scene, and a lot of that, and I felt a lot of that with Miles' story at the beginning. in what was otherwise a really breezy kind of meme movie about sort of fun and fan service. And I don't know, it's not that the mix was distracting or bad or even really clashed, but I think just my natural tendency is to lean more towards one thing than the other.
I mean, I feel like it didn't totally let up on that, like, death is an overarching thing going through it, because like later on his uncle as Prowler gets shot and killed by Kingpin, and like I'm whispering now too. I don't need to whisper. I don't know why I got quiet. I'm so sorry. He gets shot and killed by Kingpin, and like that whole scene itself is like still pretty weighty and still has a lot of punchy impact to it. So like I feel like it doesn't totally go away when, you know, it turns a little bit more lighthearted. It's the threat of death looms, and like the fact that not one but two people immediately close to Miles dies in this family-friendly wacky kids movie is still pretty impressive. Like it's not like randos in the background. These are like important people who just, one gets his spine broken when Kingpin clobbers him, and one fucking gets shot by Kingpin. Like, this is not pulling punches.
No,
it's just interspersed.
I really like that about the whole Prowler thing, too, is that, for me, that's a nice twist on the whole Uncle Ben thing, and that you can still feel the same, like, Spider-Man root of... God, I hate not being in my house.
God, I love hearing you get quiet as you're talking.
Because I have such a naturally loud voice. Anyway, with the whole Prowler thing, I love that... it really mirrors the Uncle Ben thing while adding like its own little twist to it. But I think so that was well done, but where I felt in a scene that, again, so there were times where I couldn't tell if it was supposed to be serious or it was supposed to be a meme, because like in that scene where they're talking after Prowler gets shot, and all the other Spider-Men are like, I've lost, you know, we're all defined by lost Spider-Man. Like, you know, we've already had the backstories, which is a great way of delivering exposition. But, you know, I lost my Uncle Ben. I lost my friend Peter Parker. I lost, you know, Benjamin J. Parker. I lost, you know, Benjamin Porker. I lost, you know, my Neon Genesis Evangelion dad. And
oh, Shiro, no.
And so it was just weird to me. I'm like, so the core of Spider-Man, or at least the core of the Spider movies that we've been watching, has been like loss. Like, that's the thing about Uncle Ben. It's about loss and it's about guilt. And obviously, if you're gonna say that anyone can be Spider-Man, like, you're gonna acknowledge those like similarities between the characters. It's like poetry, it rhymes. But also, like, the way that they did it, it felt weirdly like trivializing of like, oh, it's all just a meme. Like, people gotta die around Spider-Man because of course they gotta. And it was weird. I couldn't tell how seriously I was supposed to take Peter Porker losing. I don't even remember who the hell he lost, but
I think it was Ben Parker or whatever.
Yeah,
like, I think you were actually right, like with that dumb pun.
Outstanding. But yeah. So there's. I don't know. I don't know. Just again, there were other times. Here's one that you brought up. When Penny's robo-suit gets destroyed, and it expects us to feel sad about it. And it makes little sad faces as the suit shuts down. But also, she's like an android building anime girl, so can't she just build another one and like upload the files to the new one's brain? Is this Solo all over again?
That's the probably biggest, most buck wild part of it to me, is just how, like, this fucking robot, it dies, and it's supposed to look sad, and you're supposed to just feel sad for it, but the spider that's controlling it is perfectly fine. Like, I'm watching this, I'm like, isn't the spider, like, still alive? Like, why would this kill the spider? There's no reason for me to think it would. And then sure enough, the spider's like, yeah, all right, whatever, I lost my suit, let's fucking go home. Okay.
Yeah, because I wasn't entirely clear on it. I was like, wait, did we lose the spider? Like, oh, that's kind of sad. Spider Buddy. And then he crawled out, and I'm like, oh, wait, so the suit has a separate consciousness too? Like, what?
Excuse me? Hang on. How does wait, all right, let's run this back. No, yeah, it's the deaths are weird because there are two like really poignant, powerful ones, and it's just like, and the mech suit. Okay. Sorry, man. Guess you gotta go rebuild that. Shouldn't be too hard though. You seem to be pretty smart. The one other death that I do kind of just want to talk about really quick is Stan Lee's cameo and his death. Because
yeah, that's the one I forgot to mention because that was for me a really emblematic moment because it was such a poignant little scene of like Stan Lee like helping Miles mourn for Spider-Man and being like, you're putting on the mask and we're all Spider-Man, and that was like clearly like an unintentional thing that worked out really well and like was really, really like emotional and heartbreaking and like just was the perfect like send-off for good old Stan Lee. But also then like a second later the joke is that he's like conning poor Miles and like he's just using the sympathy to make money and not get any refunds and profit off of the Spider-Man thing, which felt a little crass.
So there's two parts to what you're saying here. Part one is absolutely true, and that like his whole conversation about like loss and growing from it, and like anyone can take up the mantle and everything like that. It was super fucking poignant for Stan Lee. Like as far as his cameos, the fact that this was like immediately after his passing was like really fucking good, and it felt really nice. Like it was wonderful and just so poignant to the point. Like it felt almost prolific, but also like that's an insane thing to say. However, I feel like it does end with kind of like a quick light joke, and you didn't really care for that, but I feel like it works for who Stan Lee was. Like every one of his cameos were kind of lighthearted and funny, and it feels like the perfect real homage to Stan Lee in that moment. Like it's very poignant and very Stan Lee-esque, and then it's like, also, here's a joke. Haha! Move on. And like that feels very Stan Lee, and like how he's been presented in every movie, and like it felt very necessary to keep because that's just who Stan Lee is in the Marvel Universe and beyond.
You know what? I can see it. I can feel that being like a choice that was made, like keeping the joke, because obviously they had to have like looked over that scene again once they had heard the news. Like if they had thought it was in poor taste or not keeping in, then they could have edited it out, which was my first thought of like, why didn't they catch this? Like, oh god, like this heartfelt scene is ruined. But
yeah,
I mean, this is all Stan Lee's also the guy who cameoed as a DJ in a strip club in Deadpool, and that was the joke, was that he was wacky old funny Stan Lee who made all these like beloved characters by children, and now he's talking about like some stripper like or something. And so, I mean, there always was that element to it. So, you know what? I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you.
Yay. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you really kind of want to talk about with this movie? Like we've talked about, like how charming it is. We talked about death through it. We talked about how visually stunning it is. The little cute references and memes.
Oh, that conversation, there was one other moment that was really sad that I really liked when Miles' dad is coming to tell him what he already knows, of course, because he was there, and like, part of that altercation where his uncle has been shot, and where his dad thinks that Miles is just like being a brat, like being a rebellious kid, and like he can't really like bear telling him about like what sort of happened, and like gives him a nice speech, and Miles wants to answer, but he's actually tied up because the other Spider-Men don't believe in him. That was a really good moment. Yeah, that was another suitably poignant moment about dealing with loss for me in a way that like I haven't seen that's another way in that, like, Miles' story felt more unique to Peter's, because that's sort of like the... Because I think it's a tricky balancing act when, you know, the theme of the story being, like, Spider-Man can be anyone, is that, like, you want... If you're going to have a character who isn't Peter Parker be Spider-Man, you have to, like... There's the character of Peter Parker, and then there's, like, the persona of Spider-Man, and, like, the cultural idea of Spider-Man, which... Again, I mentioned this last episode, and that, like, even though I had only really ever watched the Raimi movies once, like, I was very big into, like, the cultural idea of Spider-Man being, like, a funny guy who deals with guilt and loss and a lot of personal problems that are interrupted by his, like, fantastical problems. And so, like, you need a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's really the ship of Theseus problem. Like, how much can you remove from Spider-Man before it's not Spider-Man anymore? And if you're making a character who isn't Peter Parker be Spider-Man, you still want those elements. Otherwise, you know, why make them Spider-Man in particular? But if you have too many of them, or if you treat them in too much of a similar way, then you risk, like, wondering, like, well, this character is just Peter again, so why are we even bothering? Like, couldn't we have just, like, cast Donald Glover as Peter Parker for the Amazing Spider-Man films, and, like...
You should have anyway.
I mean, they should have anyway. That would have been amazing. But, like, you know, so Miles, and I think it's smart that they baked this into his characterization, that, like, you need to sort of answer, like, why Miles over Peter, and I think in that this way that, like, he deals with loss, even if, again, I do think it ends up getting a little bit undercut later, like, this particular relationship he has with his dad, this particular relationship he has with his uncle, that his uncle was kind of the moral opposite of Uncle Ben, that he was working for Kingpin, and, like, serving as sort of the opposite example, like, sort of why to stay on, like, the straight and narrow and help people out. That's all really good stuff, keeping Miles as, like, identifiably what we think of culturally as Spider-Man, while also still being his own character. And those were my favorite scenes in the movie, because there were a couple times where I did have that feeling of, like, this feels very similar to, like, what we saw in, like, the Raimi films, but then those moments where Miles does sort of like, kind of break out on his own were a lot of the most resonant, most, like, satisfying ones for me. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna just let that hang there, then. We're gonna end on the ship of Theseus, because why the fuck not?
What a roller coaster of an episode this has been.
I mean, it's very on brand. Like, through and through, let's be honest.
Oh, good.
I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Find my website, isortof.com, where I do pretty much everything. Check that out. I got my Twitch stream over there and everything like that.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me over on Twitter at JacksonJKeller, where I don't have to whisper because Twitter isn't audio.
I see no fault in that logic. You can find the podcast at BADH_cast on Twitter. We just tweet about updates and stuff like that. So, like, we're going to be tweeting about this a little bit early to let you know that we're going to get 2 episodes out. So, I mean, if you want to keep up to date on that news, you can do that there. You can also, like, tweet us and be like, hey, I like this episode. Or, hey, you guys are both fucking idiots. And Spider-Man 3's absolute trash. I know I'm talking about the episode we recorded previously, but, like, I feel like we didn't really say anything that controversial this episode. It's a good fucking movie. What do you want from us?
It real purty.
It real purty. You know what else is real purty? Fucking Lords of the Highway. They're a great band. They do our theme song. It's Suicide Alternate Take off them High Octane, Low Expectations. They're on, like, Spotify and all that stuff. Go check them out. Give them a listen to. Support them in any way you can. They're great. Also, 25newsletersite.com hosts us. They're a great website with a bunch of really cool people on there writing about really cool stuff. From movie analysis to, like, cult TV shows. It's all there. Go check them out. And also, next week, we're going to be releasing on Christmas Eve, aka Monday, December 24th, as opposed to the usual Thursday release, because we're going to be talking about Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. This was a listener suggested episode. Shoutouts to Chris, aka the Bearded Bane on Twitch. Go check him out. Who recommended us we do this. I don't think he even remembers recommending us. But you know what? Who cares? We're going to do it, and it'll be like a neat little pleasant surprise for him. Because, hey, it's a good idea, and like we always try and do something Christmassy. And I don't know what the fuck else we do. Frosty the Snowman, I guess he melts. That's kind of like death.
We already blew our load with Die Hard last year, like for real. So we gotta scrounge the bottom of the barrel.
Man, we used Die Hard and the Star Wars Christmas special last year.
Oh God, what were we thinking?
Right? That's fucking crazy. I don't know, maybe next year we'll do Anna and the Apocalypse, or like later this year, depending on when it comes out on DVD. Which, if you should go see that. That was a really fucking good movie. Yeah, I don't know. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go